Hello and welcome. You're watching News Central now, right here on News Central Television. I'm Kofi Bartels. Let's begin with the headlines. Governor Oti of Abia State suspends Abia State Commissioner for Health for financial mismanagement. Foreign Affairs Minister drags Permanent Secretary before Head of Service for sexual harassment allegations. Malawi's Vice President Chilima, 9 others killed in plane crash. Those are the headlines. We have details of those and other stories ahead on the news. Let's start off in Nigeria, where the country's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, has formally lodged a complaint with the head of service of the Federation regarding allegations of sexual harassment leveled against the ministry's permanent secretary, Ambassador Ibrahim Lamua. In a letter addressed to the head of the civil service, Tuga expressed his concern over the serious nature of the allegations leveled against the permanent secretary by Mrs. Simi Sola Ajayi. He also emphasized the importance of addressing the matter urgently and thoroughly. Well, in Abia State, the State Commissioner for Health, Dr. Ngozi Okoronko, is also having issues to answer for. The doctor has been suspended by Governor Alex Oti. She was said to have been suspended over allegations of lack of accountability and financial mismanagement. The suspension is to pave the way for the investigation of allegations of gross misconduct leveled against the commissioner. The embattled commissioner was suspended indefinitely during the State Executive Council meeting on Monday. Well, a News Central correspondent Chinwe Ogele now joins me on the news for more on this development. Chinwe? We'll have Chinwe joining us later on in the bulletin for that quite interesting development there in Abia State. Moving on, organized labor has insisted on its 250,000 naira minimum wage proposal. Now, they're saying it will not negotiate what they describe as starvation wage. Now, this comes as the Assistant General Secretary of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Chris Onyeka, says labor will not accept the latest offer of 62,000 naira and the 100,000 naira proposal made by some individuals and economists. The NLC President Joe Ajaero also said that labor could not embark on strike because President Bola Tinubu had yet to communicate his decision on the figures presented by the Tripartite Committee on National Minimum Wage. He made this known at Monday on the sidelines of the ongoing International Labour Conference in Geneva, Switzerland. That's the International Labour Organization Conference in Geneva, Switzerland. Ajaero said if government and the National Assembly fail to act on the demands of the workers by today, Labour will meet to decide on the resumption of that relaxed nationwide action. Now, let's go back to Abia State and, of course, to the story regarding the suspension of the Abia State Commissioner for Health, Dr. Ngozi Okoronko, on allegations, we must point out, of financial mismanagement. We have Chinwe Ogele, who is our correspondent in Abia State. Chinwe, good afternoon to you. Now, this is an interesting development. Can you please tell us more about this suspension?
Just about an hour ago, the Commissioner for Information, Prince Okekano, issued a statement confirming the rumors that came out yesterday that the Commissioner for Health, Ngozi Okoronko, had been suspended from office. Well, a lot of false, because even the statement did not state clearly the reason for the suspension, other that it was for misconduct, or misconduct could be anything. It could be, some people had alluded to financial misappropriation or impropriety or high-handedness, a lot of things. But then that ministry has had lots of issues recently. So I think her suspension was somehow anticipated.
I mean, this is all in the realm of speculation, or let me say allegation, which will be investigated. As your report has said, she's suspended for the investigation to go on smoothly. But is there any indication as to whether there is any, veracity or truth to the allegations the commissioner is facing?
Well, until the investigations are completely conducted, one wouldn't say, because even the commissioner, the special advisor to the governor on media, I called him earlier today to ask about it, but he was like, there was no official statement to that effect yet. But people wouldn't just allude or assume that it was because of financial issues that she was asked to, step down. But then a lot of things have been happening in that ministry lately, like I did say earlier. Last week, I was actually in her office to interview her about a story I was trying to look into concerning the schools of midwifery and nursing in Abia State. But she declined, and I later on gathered that she asked the principal of the school to step down, one of the schools to step down with the accountants in those schools. So a lot of things have been happening, and some of the students who are in the school have complained about series of things, and in some quarters, people had claimed that she spent so much money during the AMPA visits. That is the time where we had missionaries from all medical practitioners from Nigeria that are in the Americas. They came to Abia State to offer free treatment. Some monies are said to have been, provided for that event, but people are saying that they were not all spent. I also heard about one of a pharmacist who supplied most of the medications that were used for the event, who is yet to be paid. So these are some of the things that the investigations that are being carried out right now will unravel and bring to the fore if actually there were claims of, or there were truth to the financial impropriety being levied against her.
All right, Chinwe, thank you very much for the updates. It's quite an interesting, though touching story. We do hope that everything is clarified going forward. But it's good to see you, and looking forward to more, revealing reports from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, we'll continue the stories from around Nigeria and other parts of the world and the continent. But let's head on to Malawi and to this story, which is has gripped the entire continent in southern Africa. Well, the secretary to the Malawian President Colleen Samba on Tuesday confirmed that Vice President Saulos Chilima and 9 others have died in a plane crashes following a now concluded massive search operation. The missing plane was found in Chikangawa Forest with all its occupants dead. Well, the plane carrying Chilima, a former First Lady, Shanil Zimbiri, and 8 others departed from the capital, but air traffic control in Mzuzu International Airport informed the pilots not to try landing and instead to turn around because of bad weather and poor visibility. However, air traffic control lost contact with the aircraft and it disappeared from radar a short time later. Well, joined by Kathy Mulindi, a journalist of the Times Group. She joins us from Lilongwe in Malawi. Kathy, it's good to see you, albeit in very sad circumstances. Please give us the latest coming in from Malawi regarding this evolving story.
Yes, indeed. In the afternoon, around 12, the president announced that indeed all those 9, including the vice president, have perished in the tragic accident that took place yesterday in Mzuzu, the northern part of Malawi, around Chikangawa Forest. So after that announcement, he indicated that other details will follow because at the moment processes to have the bodies taken to Lilongwe, the capital of Malawi, are being implemented. So at the moment, I'm at the air base because soldiers at the moment in the northern part of Malawi, in Mzuzu, where this incident has taken place, they are making processes to have the bodies taken to Lilongwe. So we are at the air base waiting for the body of the vice president and also the other 9 who lost their lives in this tragic accident. So at the moment, this is where we are at the air base, where the bodies will arrive, and the ambulances have already arrived, waiting to carry the vice president and the others to the mortuary.
Are such mishaps common in Malawi?
This has never happened. It is the first time for this to happen in Malawi. That's why it has taken us too long even to find the body of the vice president and the others. It has never happened this is the first time we are experiencing this incident in Malawi. And as you saw yesterday, we were even struggling to find the bodies. We were struggling to get to where the plane had landed, had crashed. So this is the first incident happening in Malawi, and everyone is very sad. People didn't expect this thing to happen to Malawians and to happen to the Vice President, who just returned from South Korea on Sunday.
All right, thank you very much, Kathy Mulindi. We appreciate your time. We'll keep our eyes on that very tragic development, and our hearts and thoughts go out to the people of Malawi.
Thank you.
All right, we want to now take a quick listen to what the Malawian president had to say in this regarding this development, which happens to be an air crash. And when we're done, we'll come back, continue with more of the stories. Let's listen to him.
And I am deeply saddened and sorry to inform you all that it has turned out to be a terrible tragedy. The search and rescue team has found the aircraft near a hill in the Chikangawa Forest, and they have found it completely destroyed with no survivors, as all passengers on board were killed on impact. Words cannot describe how heartbreaking this is, and I can only imagine how much pain and anguish you all must be feeling at this time, as well as how much pain and anguish you all will be feeling in the coming days and weeks as we mourn this terrible loss. I also know that going through a terrible loss like this makes us feel helpless and lost, as death has a way of reminding us that we do not have control over so many things that affect our lives.
Well, that's Malawi President Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera, who earlier addressed his countrymen following this unfortunate air mishap. Now let's go to a developing story. Civilian staff of Nigeria's Ministry of Defense in the nation's capital, Abuja, have shut down the headquarters of the ministry, protesting against alleged military brutality and harassment of civilian staff of the ministry. Now, protesters allege that some of their colleagues have been brutalized to the point of death by their military colleagues. They added that the protest will continue until the Minister of Defense addresses them.
Triggered this incident is because over 2 months ago, one of our civilian personnel was brutalized by the naval officers at Lagos, Ojo town, and he died after some days. And then we are still mourning that death. And then a series of other attacks by the military on our civilian staff. Then yesterday, one of our assistant director, who is attached to Command Secondary School in Paja in Lagos, had his students being punished by the military with military drills, putting them inside gutter. So, and when he raised the observation, the next thing was that those private soldiers now pounced on him and started beating him like a criminal. The videos have gone viral. If you check, you will see that's an assistant director, which is equivalent to almost a colonel.
News Central now returns with more stories after this break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Let's continue with more stories coming from Nigeria. The Southwest Governors Forum has reiterated its support for the establishment of state police forces to further enhance the security of the country. This was contained in a communique issued after the meeting on Monday at the Lagos State Governor's Office in Ikeja, Lagos. The forum, while acknowledging the relative peace in the region, commended the collaboration between security agencies and the Omotekun Corps. The forum also elected Governor Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State as its chairman. Those in attendance include Governors Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos, Lucky Aiyedatiwa of Ondo, Dapo Abiodun of Ogun, Seyi Makinde of Oyo, Ademola Adeleke of Osun, and Abiodun Oyebanji of Ekiti. Forum has adopted Isewa Fun Ilewa, loosely put, as the official anthem of the region. Let's take some more.
Adopted Isewa Fun Ilewa as the Southwest anthem going forward. Isewa Fun Ilewa as the Southwest anthem going forward. The meeting commends the Federal House of Representatives and the Southwest Caucus for their effort at passing the Southwest Development Commission Bill and looks forward to its speedy passage at the Senate. The meeting commends Mr. President, Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, ECFR, the groundbreaking Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road, and also the proposed Lagos-Sokoto Road. And the meeting further encourages the federal government to rehabilitate all other federal roads in the region.
Well, my colleagues have informed me the anthem is Isewa Fun Ilewa. Let's head to Kaduna State, where we understand the kidnapped parish priest of St. Thomas Catholic Church, Zaman Dabo community in Zango-Kataf local government area, Gabriel Oke, has regained his freedom. Now, the priest was abducted from the rectory of the church as he shepherded on Sunday. Director General of Communications, Kafanchan Catholic Diocese, Gabriel Okafo, confirmed that the priest was released at around 9 p.m. on Monday. He thanked everyone who worked to ensure the speedy and safe release of the priest. Gunmen from criminal gangs have killed 26 people, including 4 police officers, and kidnapped dozens more in a raid on a village in northwestern Nigeria. This attack is part of an ongoing wave of violence plaguing the region. The incident occurred in the village of Gida Boka, located in the Kankara district of Katsina State. According to the police and local officials, the heavily armed assailants arrived on motorcycles and opened fire indiscriminately. The attackers also abducted an undisclosed number of women and children, adding to the growing list of victims in the region increasingly terrorized by these gangs. In other news, the Nigerian government has raised concerns about the renewed smuggling of petrol due to the recent price hike in neighboring countries. While petrol in Nigeria costs about 700 naira per litre, it averages 1,700 naira to the litre in neighboring countries, leading to increased smuggling over the past 2 weeks. The Nigerian Customs Service Controller General Adewale Adeniyi announced in Yola that the service is collaborating with National Security Advisor to combat this issue through Operation Whirlwind. This initiative follows the government's decision to remove the fuel subsidy and to redirect funds to productive sectors of the Nigerian economy while reducing foreign exchange pressure and diversifying economic growth. Now, despite the price increase, Nigeria's petrol remains the cheapest in West and Central Africa. Let's talk education now. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission in Nigeria says it has concluded plans to start a campaign aimed at combating underage smoking in the tertiary institutions in the country. Now, the acting executive vice chairman of the commission, during a one-day interactive session with students from various tertiary institutions in the country, called for the review of the curriculum in primary and secondary schools to include consumer rights education, while saying that this will inform young citizens of their rights as consumers. For more, here's News Central's Joshua Imarai.
A one-day engagement with students from tertiary institutions in Nigeria. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission in Nigeria says there is a need to review the curriculum in primary and secondary schools to include consumer rights education. The acting executive vice chairman of the commission, while making this known in the nation's capital, Abuja, says that young Nigerians need to know their rights as consumers.
And we believe that it is only proper that we should educate, especially our youth, on what their rights are, on competition and consumer protection, which is what our mandate is. We intend to review, because there is already a curriculum for our secondary schools. We want to review that and update it to be up to standard and up to date, so that from the younger ages, children learn from their schools that there are some basic rights that you have. And with rights, of course, come responsibility. So we have to also harp on the responsibility that all consumers have towards service providers as well as manufacturers.
The Commission announced that it would soon launch a campaign to combat underage smoking in tertiary institutions in the country.
More importantly, in the next couple of weeks, you see our presence in tertiary institutions, marketplaces, village squares, and we'll go there with experts. We are working with the anti-tobacco campaigners, of course, so that they'll go and lecture people on the dangers of underage smoking. And there is also the plan to have a telephone call-in toll-free number that you can call in if you have issues with smoking and you want to stop. So they'll now lecture you on how to go about it. And all this is part of that advocacy that we are doing against underage smoking.
The Commission also reviewed that it is launching new initiatives like school-based consumer rights clubs and a yearly competition for secondary and tertiary institutions, which aims to empower students with the knowledge of their rights as consumers. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
Thank you, Joshua. You're still watching News Central now. We have more stories ahead. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In South Africa, the Mkhonto Wesizwe Party has filed urgent papers in the Constitutional Court seeking to interdict the National Assembly's first sitting, which will be held on Friday in Cape Town. According to the Section 51, Sub 1 of the Constitution, the first sitting must take place at a time and date to be determined by Chief Justice and within 14 days after the election results have been declared. The MK party's lawyers have previously sent a letter to demand to the Secretary of Parliament and Chief Justice Raymond Zondo requesting a halt to the first sitting of Parliament. Well, to discuss this, we're joined by political analyst Sandile Swana, who joins us from Krugersburg in South Africa. Good evening to you. Thank you very kindly for your time. What is the basis for MK's claims of irregularity during the election, and how do they intend to prove these claims?
The basis of the claims, whether the claims are sufficient is another matter, but the basis of the claims is that during the elections, there were, in the main, that could have affected the numbers, a situation where the manual slip where they've counted at a particular voting station, when they get to the computer, they find that what was captured on the computer is different. So there would have been a few of those types of discrepancies, the manual versus the electronic. Then obviously in our systems here, if you complain like that, the complaint is investigated and a determination is made. And those determinations were made that those complaints are not substantial to change the outcome of the election.
Interesting. Sandile, is the MK's attempt to stop the Parliament's first sitting a viable legal strategy, or is it likely to be unsuccessful?
At this stage, legal analysts are saying the strategy is more political than legal, because legally, the Chief Justice and the Secretary of Parliament do not have to stop the election of the President and the Speaker of Parliament until a court declares that there were irregularities in the election itself and then holds it on that basis. There is no such decision, and it won't be there by Friday this week. So there is no legal basis to do that.
So how will this action impact on the transition process to a new government, be it a coalition government, which it seems it's supposed to be? And what are the potential consequences, apart from the impact on the process, what are the potential consequences for South Africa's political stability?
establishment of what is called a government of national unity, which is a form of coalition, if you like, in South Africa. That will go on smoothly on Friday. And then, and let's hope that the Electoral Court does not find that those irregularities were substantial enough to warrant a re-election, a revote. So if that is the case, then the Umkhonto weSizwe Party and its allies will have to use the parliamentary process to contest the ideas and practices of the government of national unity, and also extra parliamentary processes which are allowed in our law to protest in the streets and elsewhere. But I do not see that interrupting the actual operation of the government. That is normal procedure. The EFF has done that for a very long time.
What are the key issues that need to be addressed in the first sitting of Parliament?
This first sitting on Friday really doesn't have substance in terms of, for instance, macroeconomic policy, those types of things. It's more of you can call it an inauguration. You elect the president and you elect the speaker. They are sworn in. That is the business of the day. Then the matter is handed over to Parliament itself. Then the Parliament and the president separately must then do their job. The president must set up the cabinet separately. Parliament must set up its committees, and so on and so forth.
And how will the different parties in this government of national unity you earlier mentioned work to achieve their goals as a united force, given their differing ideological backgrounds and priorities?
Yes, you know, there has been attempts here in South Africa, and there has been a period, by the way, when the ANC has been in government and very successful under President Thabo Mbeki, where he had overwhelming support of investors in South Africa from the private sector, without belonging to a different party. So I did look at the numbers. If they were just to adopt those strategies, for instance, investments in infrastructure and those types of things, which are practical things, they don't need much ideology, they would definitely achieve much success. So I'm saying if they were to practice what they've been preaching, to implement data-driven strategies and data-driven policies, they would find common ground. But obviously there is this IMF type of mentality of austerity measures, which the DA may want to push. And the ANC is very weak ideologically anyway and intellectually at this point in time. So the DA could have its way in many of these debates.
Quite interesting times ahead for politics and governance in South Africa. Andile Iswanda, thank you so very kindly for your time this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Your Central Now returns after this break with more stories. Please stay with us. Welcome back. India continues to endure a devastating heat wave, with the eastern state of Odisha reporting 8 deaths within a 72-hour period. Officials confirm that India is experiencing its longest heat wave since records began, with temperatures soaring above 50 degrees Celsius in some regions. The northern part of the country has been grappling with extreme heat since mid-May, with several cities recording temperatures of between 45 to 50 degrees Celsius. The relentless heat also led to severe water shortages in many areas, placing immense pressure on water supplies. However, relief may be on the horizon as the monsoon, which arrived on India's southern coast in Kerala state on May 30, is expected to advance northward in the coming days, potentially bringing much-needed respite to the heat-stricken regions of the country. Well, for more of on this, I'm joined by our international correspondent, Efua Hagen. Efua Etisang, it's good to have you this afternoon.
Good to be here.
Yeah. All right. Now, please go straight to give us some more on this story.
Well, yes, this particular heat wave is so unusual because it's been going on for 24 days. So you've got 24 days of temperatures between 45 and 50 degrees in some parts of India. Now, India is no stranger to heat waves, but it's the length of this particular heat wave and the range of temperatures up there near the 50 degrees, some days higher than 50 degrees, that is really causing the problems here. Now, of course, like you said, some parts of the country have been greatly impacted by water shortages. There's a huge demand on supplies as, of course, people try to keep cool. Now, last month when you had the general elections on the 31st of May, 33 people, including some election officials, actually died of heat stroke in some of these regions, in Bihar, in Uttar Pradesh and Odisha. And you had deaths later on as well, a week later as the election closed. You had further deaths across the region, and those were likely caused by people coming out to vote in these extreme temperatures. Like I said, 24 days of heat between 45 and 50 degrees, and a couple of days upwards of 50 degrees as well.
What part does or is climate change playing in all of this?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that climate change is probably the main factor as to why India is seeing these record temperatures. Now, India is the third largest emitter in the world of greenhouse gases. It relies on coal really heavily to generate its needs, but there's no doubt that human activities, increasing population, industrialization, more people using transport, and this increased use of carbon monoxide and methane and chlorofluorocarbons emitted into the atmosphere is the reason why you have such a terrible rate of climate change happening so quickly. But also, India is a country that's very exposed and very vulnerable to heat. But hot days and hot nights have risen significantly over the past few years and are projected to increase between 2 and 4-fold by 2050. Heat waves are also expected to arrive earlier in the season, will be longer, and will become more frequent. Also, average temperatures in India have risen around 0.7% between 1901 and 2018. It doesn't sound like a huge amount, but year on year, that's the difference between a heat wave topping out at 45 degrees and a heat wave topping out at 52 degrees. Now, heat waves have killed more than 22,000 people between 1992 and 2015, but those are only the unofficial figures, because there's lots of people that die from heat waves in rural areas, and often those people are not counted towards the proper figures, and therefore there's not enough planning in place for heat waves.
Interesting. And India just re-elected Prime Minister Narendra Modi. How prepared do you think he and his coalition government are for the continuing onslaught of climate change on India?
And that's a $64 million question that lots of people in India are asking themselves as Prime Minister Modi goes into his third term, and they are embracing these brutal heat waves. You cannot stop what's happening with the weather. You can try and get a hold on climate change, but you certainly cannot stop those temperatures from rising. But how much is he preparing the country and preparing his people? Well, like I said, India's economy is the fastest growing in the world. And Prime Minister Modi has said that he wants to bring about green industrialization and declares the country in a green era. Now, I'm not sure how he plans for that country to be in a green era when it uses so much coal. He has introduced heat action plans over his time in office, but a study of 37 of those heat action plans has found that they are woefully underfunded and have weak legal foundations and have weak planning, frankly, for people in those districts that have these heat action plans. Now, heat action plans can contain things like planting more trees in cities and districts because they soak up the heat and they reduce heat in buildings. Heat action plans can include something like in hospitals, instead of having patients on the upper floors, you move them to cooler ground floors in facilities that don't have air conditioning. That's another thing is You need to put air conditioning in these facilities. All these things are included in heat action plans, but the heat action plans, like I said, are woefully underfunded and aren't really being put into place. So it seems at the moment, Prime Minister Modi isn't as well prepared for heat waves as he should be. But this is a huge problem, and it's a problem that actually is only going to get worse. Even if, we stick to Paris climate change agreements and we try and stop the world from heating up 1.5 degrees, heat waves are going to get worse before they get better. So this is one of the biggest issues that Prime Minister Modi is facing, and it all depends now on how seriously he takes this issue.
Ifo, keep our eyes on that story. But many thanks for joining us. Ifo Hagen, News Central's international correspondent, live from London. Thank you very much for your time. Let's go to other stories now. When Sri Lanka's economy crashed in 2022, where people thought work abroad wherever they could find it, excluding ex-soldiers who joined forces fighting in Ukraine after Russia's invasion. Now, the veterans, some of whom swept their life savings for what they thought would be lucrative, non-combatant jobs, are desperate to return home. Colombo's parliament set up an inquiry last month to track at least 2,000 battle-hardened Sri Lankans who reportedly enlisted on both sides of the Russia-Ukraine war, including in the regular armed forces and mercenary groups, with no communication for months, and reports of at least 16 Sri Lankans killed and 37 wounded. Distraught families are pleading with politicians for help.
Work before Sri Lankan army, I didn't catch weapons. How I am working for army? Then he say, okay, you are working, you have to work driving, okay, but sometime you have to attack some people. That's why you have to catch gun. You have to training 1 week, 2 weeks like that.
දෙයක් අඩුපාඩු නැතුව ලැබුණා කිව්වා. ඊට පස්සේ එලා ට්‍රේනින් ඉවර වෙලා දවස් 14ක් ට්‍රේනින් ඉවර වෙලා ඒගොල්ලෝ මේ ඉස්සරහ ලයින් එකට දාලා තියෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ දැම්මත් හරි තාම මාසයක් වෙනවා. මාසෙකුත් දවස් දෙකක් වෙනවා අද වෙනකොට තාම එයාගෙන් නැහැ පිළිතුරක් ලැබුණේ. ඉතින් අපේ පවුල් ඔක්කොම අසරණ වෙලා ඉන්නේ. අපිට දැන් මේ දෙකටම යන්න ගලා දැන් ලක්ෂ 30කට වැඩිය තියෙනවා මුදලක්. අපේ තියෙන රත්තරන් බඩුද හැමදේම තියලා ඉරිඩමෙන් කෑල්ලකුත් තියලා මේ ඒවා හිටන් අපි මේ ගෙවන්නේ. ඉතින් අපිට මේ අපි ඉල්ලන්නේ අපිට අපේ
Labor unions in Nigeria are steadfast in their demand for a new minimum wage of 250,000 naira, rejecting the government's offers of 62,000 naira as inadequate. This impasse raises the possibility of a strike as Labor advocates for a higher wage, while the government raises concerns about sustainability. The outcome of these negotiations carries significant consequences for both workers and for the Nigerian economy, including potential income loss, operational disruptions, economic slowdown, and the need for government intervention. Resolving the issue will require negotiation, mediation, and compromise between all parties involved. Mukhtar Mohammed, the Chief Executive Officer of Asher Investment Limited, recently shared his perspective on the ability of business owners to meet the demand of the labor unions for the new national minimum wage during an interview on News Central's Business Edge show.
The private sector itself is having a lot of challenges based on what the decisions of government, how the decisions have had a negative impact on their businesses. So that is why, as it stands now, if you insist on that new minimum wage, based on what the government is saying they should pay, the private sector will be able to afford it. But again, there will have to be what I call losses of jobs, because a lot of companies will have to downsize to be able to pay and then put in more work in more job for others, that maybe one person will be doing 3 or 4 people job, which is naturally not good for their health. So that's why the organized private sector is saying, look, labor, try to be considerate in what you want us to do, not just don't be so rigid that this is the amount that we must pay. We can decide to pay those amounts, but it might lead to job losses. For the federal government, I don't think they have any reason not to pay, because again, if you look at the extravagant lifestyles of the government thus far, 22 billion to build the vice president residence, 90 billion for Hajj operation. Political appointees are still doing the same thing they were doing last year with this year. And then you add the government telling us to tie our belt, and then you see those people that are appointed doing worse than that. So I think for political appointees, they don't have any excuse. I mean, for the government, they don't have any excuse. They need to pay, and if they want the private sector to pay, they also need to come up with policy. A situation whereby import duties are going high by the day. Today is 140, tomorrow is 148. They need to look at that. Those are part of the things that the private sector is saying. If you decide that we have to pay this minimum wage, then there must be area that the government is giving in to us. If the government refuses to do that, if we have to pay, then there may have to be job losses.
A group of downstream marketers known as the Major Energy Marketers Association of Nigeria, or MEMAN, has refuted reports suggesting that local refining of crude oil could lead to a significant reduction in the pump price of petrol to as low as 300 naira per litre. On the other hand, the Crude Oil Refiners or Refinery Owners Association of Nigeria, CORAN, stated that the pump price cannot be reduced to 300 naira per litre due to factors such as exchange rate and global oil prices. Still, on the Business Edge show, it featured Esther Otusonya, a senior investment research analyst with Meristem Securities Limited, who shared her thoughts on the possibility of the pump price dropping to 300 naira per litre once the Dangote refinery and other indigenous modular refineries begin large-scale production.
With the commencement of operation at the Dangote refinery and other modular refineries, PMS prices are unlikely to drop to this level, and there are different contributing factors. So we know that the removal of reliance on PMS importation is indeed a positive development, especially considering the challenges downstream companies faced with sourcing FX after the sector was deregulated, and we saw that the elimination of some costs associated with importation is beneficial. We saw costs like freight and also transportation as well as insurance being eliminated. So, but mostly the cost of crude oil itself has been highly volatile, and it remains a crucial factor. And even if oil marketers should source this product domestically, the input cost for refining is still indexed to the dollar and exposed to FX fluctuation. So, and the other cost input is specific to Nigeria, and we can see that this structural cost can actually be maybe they are control of that, but seeing reduction of price to 300 naira, that's almost like a 50% drop from what we have right now at 600 naira. Is likely is not visible. Even seeing that this current 600 naira per litre is not really reflecting the market
price.
realities of
Let's turn our attention to sports now. The Super Eagles of Nigeria have returned home from Abidjan in La Côte d'Ivoire following their disappointing 2-1 loss to the Republic of Benin in match day 4 of the ongoing 2026 World Cup qualifiers. The three-time African champions apologized to Nigerians for their lackluster performance via a tweet on their official X handle, promising a better showing for the remainder of their campaign. With a miserable 3 points from a possible 12, the Super Eagles are stuck in 5th in the 6-team group. Nigeria's chances of making it to the next World Cup, jointly hosted by Canada and the United States of America as well as Mexico, now hangs in the balance. Well, that's all at this hour. Before we go, let's take another look at the major stories. Brought to you news that Governor Alex Oti of Abia State in southeast Nigeria has suspended his Commissioner for Health for alleged financial mismanagement. Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Minister has dragged a permanent secretary in the ministry before the head of service for alleged sexual harassment. And Malawi's Vice President Chilima and 9 others have died in a plane crash. We'd very much like to hear from you. Please safely send us your eyewitness reports using the WhatsApp number and email address showing on your screen. We're active on the major social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X at News Central TV. And of course, you can watch us live on these channels or platforms. And thanks for your time. I'm Kofi Bartels. Good afternoon.